Hello, welcome to Loremaster's Lair. I'm your Loremaster, here today to continue our exploration of the solar system known as the Pact Worlds. Last week we took a look at a draconic deity, Apsu. So let's strike where the iron is hot and look towards the planet with the most draconic influence, Triaxus. Let's get started. Triaxus is the seventh planet from Galarian's sun. Well, some of the time. The reason it is known as the Wander is because of its unique elliptical path, moving closer to the sun than Castrovel and farther than the two gas giants. This changes the planet's climate immensely, creating winters and summers which last entire lifetimes, and create a world where the entire ecosystem is uniquely adapted to a beautiful summer world or a harsh winter one. Triaxus has three main species which cover the surface. The first are the Rapharians, also known as Traxians, or were back in the days of Pathfinder when they were the only humanoids known. They come in three forms depending on the time of their birth. The furry winter ones, the more lean and fleshy summer ones, and now and then a transitional form when they are born in the spring or fall, which has parts of both. Second, there are dragons, usually chromatic or metallic, who domineer their own territories. Third, there are dragonkin, originally children made by the dragons as workers for their own goals, but over the years many have become part of the people of the Dragonfire Mandate, and keep dragons from expanding their territories into the allied territories. While we are talking about dragons, let's look at our first side tangent, the part of the show where we revisit old trends. This time, we look at a breed of true dragon. We have not done one of those in a while. After all, I finished the 7 main ones in Pathfinder. Starfinder, however, has 2 more. One which we are looking at today. Star Metal Dragons. These dragons have the scales of star metal and usually the traits which come with them. With no known origin, these dragons are as rare as their namesakes are. Adamantine dragons have hard-to-pierce scales and can share the defense with their allies. Their breath is piercing. Draconite dragons are hot and cold literally. They can change the damage type and resistance type they have between fire and cold on a whim. Abyssium dragons are strongly radioactive, and so purposely isolate themselves. Their breath is fire, but I suspect it's more like the Godzilla fire breath fire. Norcal dragons are the rarest, and spend their time hunting down evil spellcasters. Their breath is cold. Finally, orichalcum dragons warp time by just being in an area, and breathe cold. Triaxus is divided into 4 relative nations. First are the Drakelands, the territories held by the dragons. Each of the dragons maintains their own city-state, which they rule with supremacy. A majority of these holdings belong to chromatic dragons, in part because metallic dragons on the planet tend to breed slower. At the time of Starfinder, they still hold supremacy, but the territories they rule is less city-state and more a corporation and corporate state, dominated by money more than might. 2 of the most famed of these cities are Drakeland, home of a cybernetic green dragon, and Naxia, home of a golden dragon who survives through diplomacy. Other landmarks in the region include Caldera Basin, which is a ring of volcanoes which circle all of Traxius, but here is known for being home to the strongest of the red dragons. The Ignomous Bay, where the fishing is done to feed most of Drakelands, the Hawk's Claw, which is hidden home to undead dragons, and the Parapet Mountains, which separate the Drakelands from the Skyfire Mandate. And while we are in the Drakelands, let's look at Side Tangent 2, the Unbound Tribes. These are those who live in the wilderness of the Drakelands, not themselves part of the dragon-controlled land. While they could easily be wiped out, or were wiped out, have not heard anything about them since beginning of Starfinder's time, they make good mercenaries, and dragons would push them into harassing their neighbors. Examples of these organizations include the Free People, who work to eliminate the dragon overlords, and the Wilders, those who prefer the wilderness and will fight any outsider trying to make contact with them. Second, we have the Skyfire Mandate, a region between the Drakelands and the Allied Territories. This is where the famed Dragon Legion stands, known in the Starfire times as the Skyfire Legion, which stands to keep the evil dragons from expanding into the region and beyond. Legion is made of an army of both Rathrorians and Dragonkin, with one of each binding together in pairs which remain together for life, even after living together with their families. A smaller region, the only real place of note is Kumo, a smuggling port which one can find just about anything, as long as it's not alive. Slavery is a no-no here. Too much of a dragon/drow commodity. On to Side Tangent 3, we have one god in two. Dragoson, made up of a Rathrorian Dragovin and the Dragonkin Endrisnon. They are a single deity of cooperation and partner bonds, which is all bonds. It's not just the moral people with the bonds, but the fact that they have the bonds in the first place, which puts them under the grace of the deity, which is why they're true neutral. Said to have been birthed when Pharasma allowed the return of one soul because the other still lived, they work well with the followers of Pharasma. They have little influence outside of Triaxus, and practically none outside of Pack Worlds, but for the planet they serve, they are one of the main deities. Third on the list, we have the Allied Territories, which is the main home of the Rathrorians. They too build their homes in a series of city-states, whether democratic, monastic, or theocratic. The most famous are the city-states of Zo, which is a democratic state which also serves as the main port for visitors. Ilok, the isolationist city which eschews both space travel and denies the Pack World's authority. Kamora, a military state which works to hunt down the vampires of the Ochoria Forest. And Preta, home of an academy and one of the greatest technomancy schools in the solar system. And landmarks include the heavily polluted Villiers Sound, the slowly dying Boyerwood, the home of isolations known as Hosei Woods, the land of biodiversity known as the Dorashi Rainforest, and the twin lakes known as a Duet. Which, while we are here, let's talk about the Magic School, which will be our last side tangent for today. The Prieta Institute of Technology, or just the PRIT, is one of the greatest technomancy schools both Triaxus and the Pact Worlds has ever seen at large. Considering the planet is on, the school is connected to corporate interests, and success here means having a dream job at any of the planet's 4 regions, or almost any off-world corporation will have it. In connection to the planet's dragons, each student is assigned to a clutch, which are motivated to succeed or fail together. Spell duels are common on campus, though they are supposed to be non-lethal. But you know what they say, accidents happen, last nation we have is Ning, home of the immortal sovereignty of Ning. In the middle of the Sephiran Sea, and unconnected from the fightings between the Raphorians, Dragons, and Dragonkin, Ning has little to worry about except maybe the threat of monsters within its borders. Each ruler of the nation gives up their name and past for the title, which is why it's known as the immortal suzerainty. While in rural areas are the same as anywhere else, it is a city and their obsession with status and appearances, which the rulers of society consider the golden rules. Rounding us off, we have places which are not part of main 4 locations. A majority of the lands considered other belong to the Sephiran archipelago, which are chained up islands only containing small villages and generally not open to visitors. Other southern islands include the twin islands of Morchia and Nusova, islands that flood each spring and lie underwater during the summer, but the native population now survives in floating citadels governed by the citizens. Up north, Grenlock is famed for its vacation spots, both in and out of virtual reality. And Weldfall is home to many natives who reject modern technology and just enjoy farming. Finally, the 2 poles of the world, which we have the Expanse, the desolate north, with a few small communities, and the Encroach, the southern pole inhabited by man-eating ice mantises, known as Shikas, which is a wonderful way to end it, because that brings us to the end of today's episode. It was a nice 2-parter, getting back into dragons, since I kind of walked more or less through them on Pathfinder-wise. I'm going to need to find some time to look into robot dragons, but and there's also new dragons coming into a master that I also need to probably do a side tangent on in the future. But either way, with the usuals out of the way this year, we now move on to the main event of the year. Well, almost. One more video looking at what is upcoming will be next week. See you then.